Do you ever wonder why you're doing what you do in life? Do you wish that you could be really happy and passionate about what you do? Or maybe you already are and you want to expand in a different direction. Hi, I'm Barbara Ann, host of What the Why? I love what I do. A lot of that has to do with my story, my journey to this point in life. And guess what? Everybody has a story. So please join me for conversations with leaders from all walks of life about what they do, and more importantly, why they do it, how they found their core purpose, their passion, their mission in life. And if you're looking for your own, maybe you'll get some great suggestions on how you too can find your why. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of What the Why. If you haven't seen us before, our show features conversations with diverse leaders from all walks of life about why they do what they do and how they found their purpose. Maybe you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, or you're stuck and you want to get unstuck. All of our guests have something in common with you. They made some kind of pivot in their life, they found their purpose, and or they help others do the same. And today's guest is no exception. Please join me in welcoming Barry LaBov. He's a two-time Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year. He's recognized author, brand strategist, founder of LaBov Marketing, Communications, and Training. The LaBov Agency specializes in helping clients discover and celebrate their brand differentiation to rally their organization and ultimately their customers. Branding is extremely important. You've heard me talk about it all the time. This is somebody you want to talk to if you're interested in learning more about how you do that. His clients, oh my gosh, I know some of you out there are Harley Davidson fans. He's worked with them. The Macallan Scott brand, am I getting that right? Macallan Scott brand?
Scotch, yeah.
Scotch, the Macallan Scotch brand. Thank you. And I know some of you drink that too. And other leading brands worldwide. He also has a book, The Power of Differentiation Wins Hearts, Minds, and Market Share. And he was in the top new marketing books on Amazon. Barry has guested on nearly 100 podcasts, so I'm super honored to have him here. And he's also the co-host on Different Talks with the LaBov team and has attracted top-selling authors, including CEOs and performers in sports, music, as well as other guests. He's joining me all the way bright and early from Indiana. So without further ado, please welcome me in. He's joining us all the way from Indiana. So without further ado, please join in welcoming him with a round of applause, Barry LaBov, founder of the LaBov Marketing, Communications, and Training, the LaBov Agency. So, woo! Welcome,
Hey,
welcome, welcome.
thank you, Barbara Ann. I appreciate it. I'm excited about being on the show today.
Oh, and I'm so excited to have you here. Our fourth season is blowing up, and you are definitely one of our more, I guess, well, they're all esteemed guests, but you're
Yeah.
esteemed in a different way. You have an amazing story and an amazing journey, and you've worked with some really phenomenal brands. But as all of our viewers and guests know, we always start with asking everyone the same first question. Before you did all these amazing things, what did little Barry want to be when he was growing up?
Originally, I wanted to be a musician. So my dad taught me how to play keyboards as a little boy. So I was 12, 13, 14 years old, and I was in a two-man rock band with my brother. And that started a decade or so of me working in rock music, getting songs published. I like to say my songs have sold well under 1 million copies. So uh, I had some success, but not a lot. And that's how I really began my career as a person who worked with others, led others, I guess you would say, and tried to do things very creatively. And that's how it began. I was not in marketing, nor did I want to do any selling or any business when I first started out.
And I love that. And for the record, I did, of course, go and look up the band because I
Oh,
was
yeah.
so curious when you first
Uh,
told me about it when we had met. I love it. I'm a big rock music fan. So,
uh,
And you're my second famous
Oh,
my second famous musician, because you're
mm,
famous to me. So, um,
yeah.
so how did you get from being a musician to where you are now?
I had been keeping my life pretty safe at one point, and I had a music business on the side that did those irritating little ditties called jingles while I was working in my band. And then tragedy struck. My father passed away at a very young age. He was 63, and I was 28 years old at the time. And all of a sudden, it occurred to me that maybe I'm not going to live forever. Maybe I'm kind of towing the line a little bit instead of just committing to what I want to do in my life. And I went for a walk one night. I'll remember it always. I was with my little dog, and it occurred to me that I have to stop playing it safe and I have to do what I think I should do. Now, what I did do, Barbara Ann, is I gave myself the opportunity that if after 6 months I wanted to change my mind, that I would be okay. I actually had a deal with myself. And to my surprise, I chose to focus on my business instead of my rock band. I felt it was time to look at that business, and I felt that business seemed to be a more fair type of environment, whereas in a rock band, it's so whimsical whether or not one band makes it versus another. So I made that decision. Uh, Turns out I was very happy with that, but it was a scary decision, and I had to, walk away from something I was very comfortable with.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that is the challenge for so many of our viewers who are watching. And, you know, going, especially after a loss. And I'm
Hmm.
sorry that you went through that experience, but it sounds like you really used that as a catalyst to this next phase in your life. Um,
Hmm.
so, what was it about branding that really, where you found that that was really something you were passionate about?
Well, it was, again, another one of these situations I did not plan. So I continued working on music in my business, and a very large corporation that I had worked with helped them with some business audio tapes and music. Came to me and asked me to take over their marketing department and become their agency. Well, at first I said no. And they asked me for about a 1 year period of time. And I kept giving them the names of other agencies in the area that were better suited because they did the branding and all this. And I was mostly audio and music. And finally, one day they called me up and said, "We want you to do this." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Because we trust you." And I went, "Oh my gosh. Okay." Now, Barbara Ann, that sounds like, wow, that was really easy. Well, it meant that I had to learn about things like video, and I had to learn about things like brochures and websites. But I did it. I did not realize that it meant all of my current customers who were used to working with me on jingles would then say, "Well, you're a competitor now. I can't outwork with you." So I lost all my current clients, and then I gained this situation. And I learned that it was very similar to much of what I had been doing in my band as well as my business. And that was, I was always trying to find something that was unique, something interesting about a client in this case, or what they did. And that's called differentiation. It's
Mhm.
finding that one or two or three things that are really special, not a million things, and not the things everybody else says they do, but the things that are so, so unique. And it really led me down this path where, okay, I've been doing this within my band, I've been doing this within my little music business, and I can do this in marketing. And it was a natural transition. I learned through this that the love that I had for music was not the greatest love of my life as far as profession. The greatest love of my life was being creative. I wanted to create something that had not been in existence. And this gave me it just gave me a launching pad to do it in so many different ways that's how it started. I never looked back and had regrets about it. It meant a lot of learning and a lot of humility because there were things I did not know, and I had to just go to people and ask them for help and say, "Look, I don't know how to do this. Will you help me?" And they did.
And that's really important because a lot of people, ego gets in the way. And what I'm hearing you say is that you did not let that derail you. And
It,
so,
yeah, in rock music, when you're in a rock band, there's a lot of ego. And, one person thinks they're the greatest singer, another person thinks their songs are always right, another person thinks they're the best soloist and all that. And you have to, in a band of three or four other people, you got to be able to not just balance it, you got to go deal with it. And in some cases, say, okay, shut it down or check your ego at the door. So I had been very used to that by the time I started my business. I was very used to having to shut my ego off and go, okay, I'm humbled. What do I need to do?
which is awesome. So now you have this one client that you're working for, but doesn't stay that way forever because you get to the point where you're working with companies like Harley Davidson and the Macallan Scotch brand.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it was something where I realized I could not just have one client because that was going to be the end of the world. Plus, I lived in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and we were very susceptible to recessions. We were, boy, if the country had a little bit of a recession, we were in really bad shape. So I really focused on pushing out away from just Indiana to working all over the nation and trying to be as unique to those companies that I talk to in New York or California or Wisconsin as anybody else. And that was a pressure that I put on myself that helped me because I did not want to be the best agency around the corner or around town or in the city or the town or the state or whatever. I wanted to be arguably the best anywhere. So it forced me to raise standards and it helped me. So I did hold on to that large client, but then I did find companies like Audi and Volkswagen and Harley Davidson and Carrier Heating and Air Conditioning and big companies like that. Disney is another one that thought, these guys are pretty good. We'll work with them. And that's how we grew this business.
There's people listening right now, they're sitting there, wow, he worked with all of these companies. It
Mhm.
must have been because of his connections. But the impression I'm getting from you, it's not so much the connections, it was your commitment.
I had no connections to Disney or uh, Macallan Scotch or anything like that in the very beginning. It's working with people. And then, yes, you do have relationships, but reaching out to Disney as an example, I knew nobody there. I had to start from scratch, and that's what I did.
Yeah. And there's somebody watching right now that's like, wait a minute, he knew no one at Disney?
Mhm.
How did he do that? What was the process for that?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I have always done, and I did not do it from a business standpoint. I did it from a humanitarian standpoint, but it works for business. And that is if I called over to Disney and I found the right department and the person who answered the phone was the administrative person, I treated her or him really well. And I made friends with them. I didn't treat them like they were beneath me. I wasn't arrogant. There was no ego. I wasn't demanding to talk to their boss in the least. I was very friendly. I was as humble as I could ever be, and I asked them for help. I asked them for insight as to when to call, any other help or assistance, so that they knew that I respected them as an individual, and I'm sure that helped because a lot of times a person in that position is not treated very well and they hold the keys to getting to the right person. So I did do those things. I made sure I made friends with every receptionist, every administrative person.
Yeah. And interestingly, I would say for all of you out there, it's probably one of the most important things you could have done.
because that's the group that feels least seen and least heard. And there are a lot of people out there that would go in with the "I'm so and so, what do you mean?" And they
Mhm.
so the fact that you treated them as human beings, they reciprocated, and you were able to build on that, which is awesome.
Well, one thing that I really have learned, and it's part of my book, and it's the subtitle, which is Win Hearts, Minds, and Market Share. And to me, that's the order that I have to go in, and we all should go in, which is we got to win the hearts of people. They got to say, hey, I like this person. I think this is a good human being. Then we win their minds over where they go, okay, this makes sense. And then, yeah, maybe there's going to be market share. And that's what I do with clients. That's how I try to help them win business because you don't just get sales because you have the cheapest product, because that's what everybody wants you to do. You have to do more. And in my book, I talk about this, but when you determine what makes you unique, your differentiation, the first thing most companies want to do is tell the world. And we always say no. Celebrate this with the most important people first, and that's your employees. It's the people who built the product or service the product or represent the product or sell the product. They're the ones that need the significance and the meaning because they're the people behind it. And if you can do that, if you can let them know, wait a minute, you're really important here. Look what you've done. Look how great this is. You're starting to create an army of people who really believe and who think that what they do actually has a little bit of value. And that's what I try to do. And whether it's talking with a receptionist or whether I'm at a restaurant or whether it's an employee of mine or a client's employees, it's critical that people understand what they're doing is important. Otherwise, why should they even stay at that company? They don't
Mhm.
matter. Who cares? Right? So I think
Yeah.
that's important in everything we do.
Yeah. You're just tapping into everything that my company, Purposeful, is all about.
Hmm.
So, um, and it's interesting because you figured out organically what so many of us have to teach others. So, with that in mind, you know, we all have our stumbling points. What would you say was some of your biggest learning experiences as you went on this journey?
I've had a lot of learning experiences. I think one thing I've heard some people say, and I think it's a great one, is it's never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think. So if there was a great success, I had to learn that, okay, that's nice, but that's not a guarantee that everything's going to go smoothly from now on. If there was a setback, it does not mean the world's going to end, we're all done. It means pick yourself up and keep going. So for me, the thing I will look back on after good times or bad times is determination, continually getting back up, trying to humbly learn so you don't repeat the same mistake, but moving forward,
Yeah.
constantly being determined enough that, okay, this stinks or this was great, but we're still moving forward. We're going to continue to do what we think is the right thing.
And I hear a lot of resilience in there, and I want to
Yeah.
really re-emphasize that that line is so meme worthy. It's
Hmm.
never as good as you think, and it's never as bad as you think.
Right.
That's one of those, worth hanging over your desk when you're having one of those days, either the best of days or the
Hmm.
most challenging of days. So, so you're working with these companies and you decide to write your book, which really I want to re-emphasize the title, The Power of Differentiation: Win Hearts, Minds, and Market Share. What inspired you to write the book?
I had an inspiration because as I'm getting older, I'm going, okay, I want to collect these stories. It's not a memoir or an autobiography. It's a collection of successful examples of companies out there that really found that they were doing some really special, distinctive things that they had been ignoring. And once they stopped doing that and started focusing on those, very few but very important things they did uniquely, they started to succeed. What happened that was most pivotal in the book is that during COVID, as I was writing the book, there was an article and it said that in 2022, in the middle of COVID, over 50 million Americans quit their jobs. They just walked right off. And it occurred to me that, this book's not just about how a company can increase its sales. This has to be a book that says you need to differentiate because you have to hold on to people who right now don't think what you're doing is very special. And those people are not your customers, those people are your employees. And all of a sudden I thought, so much of what my company does is inspiring the very people who are creating that product or producing it or selling it. And that's what happened. It shifted the book, I believe, to be far more meaningful. That it was a book where a company could read the book, absorb the ideas, and not only think a little clearer about what they do, but put their arms around the very most important people, their employees, and let them know that they care. So that's what happened. That's what brought it to this position. And what I love about what I do, and the book talks about all these examples, is it's very positive. For somebody to realize that nobody else in the world does this one thing that their company does, even though they don't think it's important, it is important. And you know what? There's a reason you're doing it, and it's in the DNA of your company. And you know what? Let's bring your employees together, explain that. Let's have a celebration. And let's make sure we never veer off the path of doing that one thing or those two things. It's very positive. So that's what the book is about. That's what inspired me. And my goal is to inspire 1 million people worldwide with that message.
I love it. Is what you are describing is the essence of the highest level of leadership that you can attain, which is servant leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Take care of your employees, and they will take care of you and the company and the clients and everyone that you serve, which is, you know, it seems like it's rocket science,
Mm-hmm.
and yet so many don't, which ties back to what you said earlier about letting go of the ego, which is huge. Um, to the extent that you can share, what's what would you say is one of your, I don't want to use the word favorite, but it's the only word that comes to mind. What would you say is one of your these projects or clients that you enjoyed the most working with?
There are so many that I have enjoyed working with that are small companies and large. One that was a smaller company, to give an example of, is a rail car company. They produce those rail cars you see on railroad tracks. And I was talking to their leaders one day. They brought me in. It was a phone call when I say they brought me in, but it was a phone call with their leaders. And I said, "Yeah, tell me all about your rail car." And the salesperson said, "Yeah, we're not very good. We're not really worth the price." The uh, quality control person, who was the manufacturing VP, said, "Our quality's low. We're no better than anybody else, maybe a little worse." And then the engineering VP, who'd been there for 30 years, said, "We're not doing anything that anyone else isn't doing." So I listened to all this and I said, what I'm hearing is that not one of you would buy your own product. And the president, who had been quiet up to that point on the call, said, that's an intriguing question. And what happened from that point was we determined some things they were doing that were very special. They would weld the rail car in a certain way so that it would stand up to millions of miles of time on the train track, okay? And they took extra time doing that one weld. And they never even thought about that. And I said, "Well, doesn't it cost you more money and time?" They go, "Oh, yeah, a lot more money and time." I said, "Do your competitors do it?" They go, "No." I go, "Well, maybe that's something special." Now, that company, I'm still working with them and love them. In a 3-year period of time, their stock price went up 20 times. So they were 20-fold, 20x. And they are now very profitable, and their morale is much higher than it's ever been. And they're not done yet, but they're doing great. I love that company because they do care. They've been around, like I said, over a century. And here's this company that's really doing good. They're almost like a pun, but the little train that could. They're the little rail car that could. And they're starting to do it. And that's what makes me so proud for them.
Wow, that's awesome, especially someone whose office is right across the street from where freight train comes
Hmm.
through.
Yep.
I'm probably looking at the cars
Oh, yeah.
that
Yeah.
are designed by that company on any given day. Um, really frustrating when traffic backs up, but
Hmm.
you just never know. And now I'm going to be thinking about that story behind that. Uh, what would you say? And it's a slight twist on a question that I usually ask. What would you say is a cautionary tale that you would share um, with those out there who are listening?
One tale that comes to mind is I was really excited to work with a heating and air conditioning company that created a really unique, environmentally special process in that they could cool or heat your home not by using electricity, but by digging deep into the earth or into a lake that you had or into your water table, and they were able to do all that for minimal amounts of energy. It was a brilliant idea. And I was so excited to work with them. And I talked to the president and I said, will you tell me how you describe your company when you meet people? And he says, oh, yeah, I meet a lot of people. I said, what do you tell them? And he said, I tell them we make air conditioning units. And I said, well, what else? He said, that's it. We just make air conditioning units. And I said, yeah, but you're saving the planet. You're doing so much with environmental technology. And he said, yeah, well, we're just making air conditioning units. And that company, I worked with them for a little bit. That company had so much potential, but they didn't want to go down the path of doing that. And what happened long term for them was they ended up getting sold. Their morale was very low and they underachieved year after year. And they had all this greatness in front of them. But instead of focusing on that, they just looked at themselves as a basic company doing basic work that was no big deal. And they paid for it in growth, they paid for it in morale, and they paid for it in the future of what their company was worth. And to me, that's sad. They just threw it away. I share that story in the book to help people understand, hey, here's a cautionary tale. You can have something great, but if you don't acknowledge it, does it really exist?
And wow, I'm so glad you picked that because, you know, a lot of companies out there, a lot of individuals are going to these networking meetings
Hmm.
and they're told niche down or, just what's your 3 words? And they're missing the brilliance of what makes them unique a lot of times.
Hmm.
And so thank you for sharing that in particular, because that for a lot of you out there who are doing something different, if you're not telling people what makes you different, you're not really going to get anywhere. Because why would anybody want to use you if you're going to get the same thing? You just stick with what you know.
Yeah, I grew up with the old saying, which was, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody's there, did it really make a sound? And I look at differentiation like that. If you have differentiation, but you never tell anybody about it and you don't pay any attention to it, are you really doing anything unique?
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what you got to think about. And sharing what you do that's unique is not bragging because it may not be right for everybody. You can say, we developed this to do X, Y, and Z, and somebody may go, oh, it's great. I don't want to do anything like X, Y, and Z, but that's interesting. But that's good. You're not supposed to be for everybody. You're supposed to be for yourself. Do it the right way, the way you do it, and then find those very few but very loyal customers who think, okay, this is a great idea.
Love it. As believe it or not, as we start to wind down, um, let's talk a little bit more about your book, where people can find your book, where they can find you. Before I do that, I'm really curious in terms of how you will answer this question. What question do you wish I had asked you that I didn't ask?
That's a great question. I think you've asked some really great questions. The only question that would come to mind is, in my life, was there a person that inspired me to move forward? And I would say to that answer, it was my father, who told me as a young boy that I can do anything I put my mind to. And he told me that when I was 3. I didn't even know what put your mind to meant, but I knew it was good. And so he is the person in my life who gave me this feeling that I could work really hard and do well.
It's awesome. Yeah, I almost asked you that question too, and I
Mhm.
was like, oh, let
Awesome.
me see. So that's awesome. So, in terms of your book, it's
Mhm.
available on multiple platforms.
Right. It's
Um,
available worldwide. It's on Simon and Schuster, which means Amazon has it, which is great. Uh, it's on Kindle. There's an audio version. The audio version has me speaking it as well as some of my rock band songs on it. So it's a little unique. And to reach me, I'm very reachable. So on LinkedIn, you just look up my name, Barry LaBov, L-A, B as in boy, O, V as in Victor. Or go to my website for the company, LaBov, LABOV.com, or my personal website, which is barrylabov.com. If you look up LaBov Music or LaBov and Beyond on Spotify, or a band called Mark Urgent, like the name Mark and the word urgent, you can find my music out there as well.
that's how I looked that up. I was like, Mark Urgent, that's a very, like, Mark, as in, this is urgent. I was like, that's how I remembered it. So,
That's the story. I had a recording producer interrupt a phone call I was on, told the operator it's an emergency. Operator hangs up. He calls. He said, I love your music. Put it all in an envelope and mark urgent on it. I thought, Mark Urgent. I thought, what a great name. Sounds like a spy, like a James Bond spy or something. Mark Urgent. And that's how we named the band.
I did not know that. That is so cool.
Yeah.
You just never know.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. So, um, any final parting words for those out there who they just need that little bit of encouragement or even just a nudge to know that they can do it?
Yeah, I think one of the greatest questions when you're in that kind of a situation is, ask your closest friends, the people who know you the most, what is it that I should never ever change? What am I doing that's really good? What do you want me not to change? And listen to them. Listen to a half dozen or more of them. And you'll start to hear things that you really do that they value. And hold those one or two things really close, because those are your differentiations. Those should fuel your courage to start moving forward, because you're holding on to the strongest things that are all about you. And going forward, it gives you a far better chance of success.
Great words to live by. Thank you so much for taking time to join us at what is a very early hour for you,
Sure.
and to everybody who's watching. And as Barry already put out there verbally, his contact information, his information will also be available, in the comments that are posted with this video on the various platforms where we air our podcast. And so, thank you for being here as a guest.
Thank you, Barbara Ann. I really appreciate it.
It's the honor's all mine. And for our audience that's been, whether you've been following us for a couple of episodes or for 4 years, you know, please, if you enjoyed what you heard, if it inspired you in any way, you have so many viewing choices out there this day. Please tell a friend, share it so that other people can benefit in the way that you've benefited from, joining us today and watching some of our other guests. And we've had some really great guests, and we're going to continue to have some really great guests. So please continue to tune in, to be inspired, to be motivated, to be validated. Because remember, whether you're looking to make any changes in your life, no matter how big or small, all of our guests have something in common with you. And we would love to be a part of helping you to find your purpose and live it.